Welcome to another competitive format video on the Zach Carter's channel. Today we are taking a look at True Draco versus Trickstar or Trickstar Sky Strikers. So we're going to be running for the WCQ format list based on the current ban list. Obviously things will be updated as soon as we get a new ban list. But here is the Draco build going with Erupt, no extra deck, and fairly standard side deck. We have actually got an online community build as well going on currently, so players can get involved in that. There'll be a link in the description if you want to take part in building a community Draco deck, and this is based on the current version of that. So fairly standard, no extra deck in here, and standard side 2 needing to deal with Goki and modern format decks. Then for the Trickstar Sky Striker list, again this is fairly standard based it's vaguely similar to a lot of the things that we've had on the channel recently. You need to run 9 hand traps at least versus a Goki format, and then generic stuff to deal with the sort of rogue that you see cropping up in kind of LLDS events and potentially into the early stages of the WCQ format. So that is it for the list. Let's get on to the match. So kicking off game 1, I'm going to be on the left with the True Draco deck, and Jason will be on the right with Trickstar Strikers, and I believe I've won the diorama at this stage, so I open up with Diagram on a set Disciples in order to turn that into something a bit more useful. So I go for APOC here, and then have Terraforming into a second Diagram, and since we haven't seen a draw come down, I can then hit APOC there, and get the heritage out, which will be able to work basically as Pot of Greed here. So it's a little bit greedy of me. I then use the effect to tribute summon into a Maiden and a set 3 and pass. So the board potentially quite strong given the number of floodgates available. Jason's going to open up a light stage to start things off. I decide to chain the Maiden. You could potentially just hold this because you know they're going to normal summon the Candina and you want to play around Gamma. But I decide to just go with the Maiden straight away to add Dynamite. I have made a mistake already at this point, so I'm going to be using the Imperial Order on the second light stage that he uses, which will deny him additional cards, but generally that's going to be enough. I just wanted to see what he had going for him. So he goes for Candina, which can add him, I believe he goes for the Reincarnation here, yep. But his hand is most likely filled with spells, which he can't really do anything with at this point. So he's just going to have to deal with it and pass turn. I have taken 700 for the Imperial Order here. He's then going to flip the Reincarnation. I'm actually going to chain the Maiden here because I want the additional draw. I don't think I need to worry about losing an additional Ignis. So he's going to chain his Licorice, which means that I'll be taking some extra damage when my hand does get banished. So I'm losing 3, but then I get a new 3, so I think the early Reincarnation isn't that much of a problem. Losing the Dynamite is kind of an issue, but if I'm set up with Floodgates, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem for the True Draco, especially given that Order is currently on the field. Just debating how I want to play out the turn. I go for an Ignis, APOC popping the Licorice there, and then attacking in with each of these monsters. They are on reduced stats currently because the Diagram is not doing anything for them though. Jason's going to open up another Candina, or the first Candina actually, just brought out again. I'm going to chain the Maiden to this to add the final Ignis from my deck. There aren't that many spaces open at the moment, so I don't see that there's much point just straight up adding a spell, so I just go with the monster so that I can have more options to be over his field. He adds the Lilybell and then goes to summon it. So he can push through some damage. I'm only on 5/8 at the moment, so potentially if he can set up enough damage, then that will be strong enough to deal with everything. So he goes for the Holy Angel with the aim to burn me out a bit. He activates Reincarnation, targets the Lilybell to summon it. I then chain the Ignis to add a Heritage here, and I take some damage here from the attacks coming in, and he has Licorice 2, which he puts onto the board, which pumps up his Holy Angel, of course, but I have a waterfall to get rid of the weaker maiden there, and he doesn't actually, yeah, he has enough attack to take out the Ignis as well, because the diagram is not boosting the stats at the moment. But I didn't feel like I was in a position where I could just take direct attacks from everything. So he's just debating what he wants to do, but before he finishes the battle phase, I'm going to flip our rivalry so that he can't blow up my entire board with a Trickstar or anything like that, which will limit his options a little bit. So I just start my turn drawing, taking some damage off the Light Stage Licorice together, and that does of course boost up the Holly Angel, unfortunately. I decide to tribute the order here. With Ignis now on the board at 2700, I have the chance to deal some pressure, take out that Holly Angel potentially so that I can start dealing with Licorice. A little bit early I go for the diagram here, getting rid of the set Heritage to add Disciples and popping the field spell. We're going to see Jason respond actually before I use Disciples here. So Jason is going to use Droll on the add. So I'll chain the Ignis in order to activate a Heritage from deck, just giving myself that extra resource onto the field. Obviously I can't actually use the Disciples anymore because Droll has been activated, so I can't add anything. So from this point, I'm just gonna attack over the Licorice to deal some damage and put myself in a stronger position, and end with set 2 and passing there. Jason just considering what plays he has available. The rivalry is hindering him a bit here because he can't just make Trickstar and then burn me out of the game. And without the order on board, I'm no longer under the same pressure that I was before to actually deal some damage. So he's actually in a position where he has to do something about my board instead. So he goes for a normal summon of Candina. I'm going to flip Erupt in order to stop that from going off. And I should actually take some damage from this. I should take 200 from the activation of Erupt whilst Candina is on the board. So I should be on 2500 life points currently. But Ignis is the only monster on the board which is not vanilla at the moment. So just applying that 200 damage there. We'll see if Jason can think of a way out of this situation. It is a bit tricky at the moment. Rivalry Erupt is a powerful combination. So he doesn't have anything to play with. In my turn, I'm going to use Disciples to put back 3. Get myself into a stronger position with more resources. I can then use Diagram to pop Disciples, get rid of the back row. He's going to flip a Call by the Grave, but really he should have played it a little bit earlier so that he could get rid of the Ignis being put back into the deck. Instead he gets rid of a Maiden. I am very low on monster count within the deck, but I have access to diagrams already, so I can just keep on adding stuff if I need to. So I pop a Duality here, and set, I believe that's an APOC there. Yep, and then I tribute that off for the second Ignis, and then that's enough resources to take game 1. Moving on to game 2 then, we've had access to the side decks which you've seen at the start. Jason is taking turn 1 here, so he goes for Terraforming, adding Light Stage Candina then, and he's going to go through the Candina to add a Reincarnation as potentially the best disrupt here. He then just goes to set 2. We'll see if and then he turns the Candina into a Licorice. Decides to put it in defense because obviously all of the true Draco monsters are pretty hefty. I'm going to take 400 on the draw phase, and then use Diagram on a set card, but there is a Ghost Ogre there, dealing with the Diagram, which of course does not resolve because it's a field spell taken off the field. So I end on set 5 and pass. Actually, when I set 4, Jason's going to flip the Reincarnation because he needs it to be into the grave. and then I add another one and set that instead, so we still have Gozen Match there, being the card taken out of the hand. Potentially not that useful actually in the Trickstar matchup. However, of course, it does deal with the Sky Strikers. Jason has an Ash for the Shared Ride, which I flip when he goes for a search with Candina. So that's going to limit the usefulness of my back row, unfortunately. If I'm stuck on only 4 back row, then I'm not going to be able to do an awful lot. I kind of need my access to a Draco monster to get things going. So he has access to the Lilybell now, and that's a lot of damage that he's just assembled onto the board very quickly. Given that I don't have anything like a Mirror Force here. I am going to flip Order because I don't want to be taking extra damage from the light stage, and I don't want it to be targeting my set cards as well. But Jason has a Reboot, halving his life points and locking me out of any of my back row. I'm just working out which card to set, if anything, but I decided to just flip my own Reboot. However, it does mean that he gets to set his sided in cards, which include a heavy Storm Duster, and that is potentially going to just steal everything from me because he'll be able to pop both of my back row as soon as my turn begins. He's debating whether or not to turn these into a Link 3 monster. He just stacks them up, accidentally moves the zones around, but that's no really big issue, to be honest. I'm currently only on 26, so I need my draw to actually count. I draw something and it doesn't turn out to be any good, so I just fold at this point. Okay, so moving into Game 3 then, I'm going to be taking the start with the True Draco deck on the left. Just going to think through my hand, consider whether or not I want to play into stuff. I decide it's worth the risk to play through a draw basically, popping the Ignis with the Diagram here, so that my Heritage will net me 2, but unfortunately he does have the Droll, which means I'm going to have to end on Dynamite and Justice set with a Diagram up. So it's a bit of protection, and it's a big monster with a potential disrupt for him, but it's not very strong as an end board for turn 1, unfortunately. I am going to be able to just punch through with the Dynamite because Jason doesn't have an awful lot of resources available. He flips the Scapegoat. I should really respond with the Dynamite at this point, but again, it's one of these situations where you can choose to attempt to play around Gamma, so I decide that I won't bother with it at this moment. Jason goes for a Phoenix here in order to deal with my back row. It'll be co-linked, so he will get the draw off as well, which is pretty nice for him, but I will chain the Dino at this point. Gamma no longer being a threat because he has monsters on the board. I bring out the Return so that I have the ability to bring back some of my resources in the grave. I have an Ignis in the grave already, but he does get rid of the Diagram, which is an issue, and then he's going to attempt to use Red Reboot. Now, based on the wording of Red Reboot, we're not sure if this is entirely legal, because the Red Reboot says that if your opponent attempts to activate a trap, we believe that the return is being activated by a monster effect, and it's kind of similar to the whole inherent, non-inherent summon kind of thing. So we believe that at this point it's not actually possible to play a Red Reboot. However, if it is, feel free to leave a comment below, let us know that this is a problem. You did of course see there on my side, even if he was going to play Reboot there, I have my own one set. So we're just going to wind things back, assuming that he cannot play the first one. He's then going to go through with the Cerberus to pop my Ignis, but I will chain the effect of Return in order to summon my own Maiden. So he's currently sitting on a board which is immune to destruction by card effect and battle, which can be a little bit tough for Draco to deal with, to be honest. The whole deck is designed around targeting and popping, so if Goblin or Cerberus comes out it can be a bit of a struggle, but your monsters are pretty hefty so they can deal a fair amount of damage over even these Link boys here. And I do have access to 2 additional resources every turn at this stage. However, I have already used the Dynamite, and it looks like Jason might try and deny me access to any additional resources from the Maiden. He's going to not bother summoning that Licorice, he's just going to go straight into a Trisbana so that he can use his Engage. I will chain the Maiden because I do want access to that resource, so adding an Ignis there. Unfortunately, it is of course not the best resource to be adding because it isn't an Ignis. He's then gonna use Hornet to go into Kagari, adding back the Engage, I believe, and getting rid of all of my back row at once, which deals a hefty amount of damage too. And will actually remove his own back row as well, which was the reboot we saw earlier. So we're just going to account for that. And then he's going to add Afterburners off the Engage, then he has a field spell for a light stage, so he has a lot of resources available at the moment. He gets to special summon a Lilybell. If he wants to, he's going to decide not to play the light stage first. He's going to use Afterburners first, then play the light stage, so that he has the Lilybell. He can then attack with the Trisbana over the Maiden, and attack with Lilybell, and attack with Licorice as well. And it's just an immense amount of damage at this point. So unless I can top deck something phenomenal, this is going to be locking me out of the game, because I will have taken far too much damage, especially with the 400 on draw 2. In Draco, it's very hard to come back from a position without 2 cards. I have a Rivalry and an Ignis, so I contribute the Rivalry for the Ignis, but Ignis is not strong enough to take out Topologic, which means I can only take out the Lilybell. He then has access to, take out the Licorice, he then has access to the Lilybell anyway, and another Licorice, which he adds back. So that is enough resources for Jason to take Game 3, and Trickstar Strikers win this match. Thanks for watching this video. Let us know if you have any comments in the comment section down below. Be sure to point out any mistakes that we may have made in the production of this video, whether it's in the commentary, on the side of play itself, perhaps we've made a miscalculation in life points, anything that has gone wrong we need to know, so that we can improve as players and develop as a community. Let us know if there are any plays that you would have made differently during the course of these games. We'd love to know if there are any changes that we should make tactically. Constantly during these kinds of games we do discuss with each other as to what the optimal line of play is, as that's one of the key parts of the competitive format games that we're providing. We want to give you what is the ideal scenario of what would actually happen in each of these cases, so that you can see which deck beats the rest. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.